Finance Minister Nicola Willis is defending her spending habits after Treasury pointed out that 5 years on from the beginning of the pandemic, spending is still close to its pandemic-era peak. Nicola Willis told Ryan Bridge on Early Edition this morning that her government will not repeat Jacinda Ardern's mistakes.
Across our first two budgets, we have already delivered $44 billion worth of savings. Now, it is correct that we have put a lot of those savings back into the system, into education
Which
spending,
is exactly
into
the point.
health spending.
The government's still just as big, right?
No, it is not just as big.
Ruth Richardson is the former Finance Minister and current chair of the Taxpayers Union. Are with us. Evening, Ruth.
Good evening.
You don't agree with Nicola, do you?
No, I do not. And she needs to face up to what Treasury is telling her. This report is one of home truths and hard decisions. Treasury is saying to her from the rooftop, shouting, fire, fire, our fiscal position is not sustainable. We face greater pressure on the fiscal position than we have in the last 20 years. Higher starting debt levels, less favourable interest rates and growth trends, long-term fiscal pressures such as population ageing and climate change, and demands on government service provision and public investment. Now, bottom line is they say successive governments must deliver operating surpluses, maintain borrowing capacity, prioritise high-value capital projects, and lift economic growth to rebuild our fiscal sustainability. We're doing none of those things.
What would you do if you were in her position?
Well, I think it's pretty clear she's got to do three things. First of all, she has to take stock of the public expenditure freight train. She says she saved all that amount of money. She just ploughed it back in. That's spending by any other name. I think that Nicola needs to do an Erica. Erica gets top marks. She's shown what it takes to get your hands around a problem and deal with it at a fundamental level. I think Nicola should follow suit. So instead of worrying about the price of butter, she should be worrying about debt and deficits, start running some surpluses, and look at the way in which she can immediately pay down debt and deal then to the environment in which we're going to get some decent growth, which we don't have.
I agree with everything that you have said, Ruth, but what I want to know is why doesn't... Nicola's a smart woman. Why doesn't she do it? Is she out of depth in finance, or is she simply making some calculated choices to get re-elected?
Well, the Treasury is very clear about what the choices are that you have to make. And when you're the Minister of Finance, you've got to be the hard man. And you've got to take the decisions. You should be the one that's saying to the Cabinet, right, we need to take stock here. You know, is the economy stupid? They are drowning electorally. So what they're doing now, tiptoeing around the problems, not working electorally. So they might as well start dealing with the problem at the economic level. And at the economic level, the choices are very clear indeed. We're spending too much. Our debt is too high. Our growth is too low. And when we face all the headwinds that we do internationally, we are not in good shape as a country. We're vulnerable, and we have to take stock. As I say, that Nicola should do an Erica.
Yep, I agree with you. Okay, what do you make, though, of the argument that you have to be counter-cyclical, right? So if we're in recession, as we are, then the government has to spend.
No, I don't agree with that. They go through this argument of what's pro-cyclical and counter-cyclical. We had two episodes. I was part of one. The economy had been in recession. I knew that what we needed to do to get growth was dramatically control public spending, free up the economy, and within short order we had the most dramatic reduction of debt and growth in jobs and in the economy. On the contrary, Robertson and crew, they decided they'd be pro-cyclical and they would splurge an explosion of public money at the very time when the economy didn't want it.
Yeah.
And what have we got as a legacy? Low growth, high debt, and a hangover. Now, that's all history. We've got to deal with the situation we face now, the worst fiscal position for 20 years. That has to be dealt with now. Now, people will say it's the economy stupid. I would. But then Nicola would say, well, it's the electoral system stupid. Yep. But as I read it, the leaders of the ACT Party, the leaders of New Zealand First, the Deputy Finance Minister, Chris Bishop, they're all singing from the same song sheet, which is, hey, Christopher Luxon and Nicola Willis, we've got to get our hands around this. Show the country we mean to face up to the problem and deal with it.
Ruth, thank you very much for your expertise. Appreciate it. That's Ruth Richardson, former Finance Minister, current chair of the Taxpayers Union. Everything that she just said is right.